This season was mad. Nottingham Forest were challenging for Champions League football. A 17-year-old was the best player on the planet, and Man United was so bad that in any other season they'd be relegation candidates. So what the hell was 2024-25 football? Let's start with the Premier League, because Arne Slot came in his first season at Liverpool and won the league. I love this because it blows out the argument of he needs his own team, he needs to get his style of play implemented in. Very funny that people have selective memories, because during the season before, people were saying this team wasn't good enough. There was a lot of diminishing stars in it, and yet now it's Jurgen Klopp built this great team that literally anyone could have come in and won the league. And granted, he had a great team, but he also made no signings. And he came in a head shinier than Homer Simpson in that episode and won the league really with no stress. Then Mohamed Salah had one of the best runs from August to around January that a player has ever had in the Premier League. He smashed everyone in the goal scoring tally, he got the most assists in the league, but he's been pretty poor since February. And I think this is where you go into the wider Premier League. Has it gotten worse, or have the worst teams gotten better? Nottingham Forest nearly got relegated from the Championship, 5 years ago? And I can definitely say that because I had to watch so many of the games in lockdown because my mate was a Forest fan. They weren't just boring to watch, they literally affected my mental health more than the national lockdown that was going on. Now they've turned Chris Wood into a 20-goal a season Premier League striker. Bournemouth, 2 years ago, literally everyone thought they were just going to finish 20th, didn't they? And then Gary O'Neill kept them up, and then he got sacked. And then we were like, right, well, they have to finish bottom again. But Iraola this season, before a lot of injuries, because remember, Tavernier went down for a lot of the season, Kluivert had quite a few games off, Evanilson had quite a few games off. They were pushing for a top 6, top 7 finish. They even sold the best player Dom Solanke the season before, and they came around mid-table, which to be honest was a bit underwhelming the way they were playing. The best strike partnership in the league this season was Johan Visser and Brian Mbeumo for Brentford. Let's rewind to when Ivan Toney was going to Saudi Arabia. Did we think Brentford were just going to continue and even get better without him? Brighton hired the youngest manager in Premier League history, had a great start, had a very poor middle, and then had a great end. But to get away from the mid-table sides, this is probably the best Champions League race we've seen in my lifetime maybe. You had Man City, Arsenal, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, Chelsea. They were all pushing for it on the last day of the season. It took Aston Villa getting a goal disallowed, Newcastle losing at Everton, and Nottingham Forest losing at Chelsea for the race to be decided. But what if we go down the table and have a little giggle at Spurs and Man United, because what's happened? Spurs finished 17th, but have Champions League football next year. What the hell is going on? How many times have you seen that before? The last time was maybe when Wigan won the FA Cup but got to the Europa League, but then also got relegated that season. I've never seen teams like a Spurs and Man United this year who literally tanked the back end of the season just so they're prepared for the Europa League final. It's something that you see in American sports so they can get higher draft picks. And it's one of the weirdest things for Spurs because this is probably their best season since 2019 when they got to the Champions League final. How can you finish 17th in the league, spend so much money? I mean, they had a pretty good transfer window from what you saw at the start. How can you have your best season in more than half a decade? And Spurs did have so many injuries, they barely had a defence. And I do admire Postecoglou a bit for just not changing, but on the flip side, I think it could cost him his job in the next 6 months. But again, that didn't make them come 17th, not having Romero and Van de Ven. They can barely defend anyway. But to finish on the Premier League, and I'm not going to leave Man United alone, because they deserve it this year more than any other year, 42 points. Do you remember when Leeds stayed up that season when they beat Brentford on the last day? They got 38 points. How about 2 years ago when Everton nearly got relegated? 36 points. So that's 2 wins separating that team to Man United. Man United, the team that won the FA Cup last year and was so hopeful. They spent a stupid amount of money again this season. And you know what? They deserve it, because I don't know if this is towards the fans or it's mainly the club. It didn't feel like the club wanted to win a trophy because it was a trophy. They felt like they wanted to win a trophy because it was the gateway to the Champions League and it helped them financially, which I do understand, but that is where football is going, isn't it? They wanted to win it because it would help them pay for the mistakes they made with Antony and Casemiro and Jadon Sancho. And despite this season having such a good Champions League race, it is getting more and more annoying just hearing about these teams that never will compete in the Champions League buzzing to get into the Champions League. I mean, I'll end on United, but it's going to be an interesting summer that they still have to pay for Anthony, for Jadon Sancho, and all these players that they want to ship out of town. But we'll finish in England, where balance has been restored, hasn't it? Man City didn't win a trophy this season, and that is how good Pep Guardiola is, that we're excited when he doesn't win a trophy. But it's also fun when you see teams that haven't won one for so long, or in Crystal Palace's case, has never won a major trophy, win it for the first time. Newcastle, 70 years, and they deserved it against Liverpool. They were absolutely brilliant. It just makes you enjoy these tournaments more and more, because you can get into the point where you're like, oh, it's the League Cup, Man City are going to win it. The FA Cup, it's either going to be Chelsea, Man City, Man United, Liverpool. But let's move on to the Champions League. And I don't know if we owe UEFA an apology. I don't think they deserve any praise over the last, decade, 20 years. Whatever they've done with this new format, I think it's going to have long-lasting effects on these players, because I think it's going to burn them out. But for one season, it was brilliant. Football is boring, everyone's saying. Football is so stagnant, there's no creativity. And yes, some is warranted of that criticism. But if you watched the Champions League this year, and you found it boring, then you're just a miserable, cynical person. I mean, PSG for one, unfortunately it wasn't the most competitive final, but it was some of the best attacking plays I've seen in a while. It's so refreshing, because you know what it feels like? It feels like watching those early 2010s Barcelona teams, just the high intensity, the dribbling going at all the fullbacks, just the absolute work rate of the midfielders, the wingers, everyone in the team. And it's also probably a smugness from a lot of football fans in the world, because they've lost a lot of the best players. Messi's gone now, Neymar's gone, and Mbappe's gone, and it feels like they've got considerably better. Inter Milan just did not show up, did they? But you can't take it away from a player like Doué, who had nearly a 10 out of 10 performance. Unfortunately, I think the worst part about the Champions League season was the final. Everything prior to that was nearly perfect. But let's move on, and I genuinely don't even think it's recency bias. Inter Milan, Barcelona, the semi-final, that could be the best Champions League tie I've ever seen. Man City versus Real Madrid, or Real Madrid versus PSG in 2022 comes close. However, I don't remember anything being as good, as high quality as those two games. But we talk about how wingers are too cautious nowadays, how they're too robotic, and I think that was put to bed in these games. Then you look at Jan Sommer having the best game of his life in the second leg, Rafinha being a Ballon d'Or favourite, going up against this Inter Milan defence, and then Acerbi in the last minute for some reason getting an equaliser at the San Siro. But despite Barcelona losing, Lamine Yamal is the story, isn't he? He's the best teenager I think we've ever seen. I say that now. I've never seen someone at 17 better than Lamine Yamal. I need to make an apology, because I said that he didn't deserve a signature boot. And with all due respect, I love Lamine Yamal. I think he's going to be a world-class player in the next couple of years. But he's got a signature boot. I mean, he's had, 2 pretty good seasons? The guy has just signed a nearly €40 million contract a year. He's unreal. That goal in the first leg, I mean, that could be a 10 out of 10 performance, that. It's a shame, because PSG versus Barcelona would have been a really entertaining final. But that Inter-PSG game is literally the definition of an immovable object against an unstoppable force. Quickly give a shout out to Arsenal, because that game against Real Madrid, the first leg especially, I mean, Declan Rice putting himself back on the map, scoring those 2 free kicks. And I think I speak for most football fans, where we do enjoy Real Madrid losing sometimes. Harry Kane won a trophy for Bayern Munich, a massive achievement for him. I'm happy it happened before the bloody 2026 World Cup. I mean, he couldn't finish his career with that pre-season Audi trophy, the only one to his name. And I think Spain had a lot of talking points this year. I think Real Madrid for one, I think they embarrassed themselves just on a global stage, didn't they? I mean, let's start with the fact that they brought in Kylian Mbappe and they got worse. Kylian Mbappe had a good season at Real Madrid. He had a slow start, but he had a good season. But I think the fact that Jude Bellingham's position had to change a bit, Vinicius Jr. was no longer on paper the best player in the team, and they just completely killed Rodrigo's career at Real Madrid. I mean, he was one of the most underrated players in the world, and it seemed to work better with Joselu up front, with Vinny Jr. and Rodrigo, rather than Mbappe. And that's not Mbappe's fault. They did not replace players like Nacho Fernandez. They needed a stronger defence, and they had quite a few injuries. It just is what it is. Sometimes when you bring in one of the best players in the world, it does ruin the cohesiveness of a team. But then there's 2 moments where Real Madrid just threw the toys out of the pram, and it was brilliant to see as a neutral, but it's embarrassing as one of the most prestigious football clubs in the world. One was a Copa del Rey final, Barcelona won it, fair play to them. Jules Koundé scored a great goal to win it. But look at the players on the sideline, look at Rudiger. I mean, what were they doing in that game? And unfortunately, this is just the reputation Real Madrid have. If they don't win, then they're terrible losers. And this goes on to the Ballon d'Or ceremony because Rodri won, and I think it was fairly deserved. I would have no qualms if Vinicius Jr. won it. I think he was definitely the best attacker in the world, and he won the Champions League and the League. But the fact that Real Madrid then cancelled their trip to go to the Ballon d'Or ceremony because they knew Vinicius Jr. didn't win. I mean, this is one thing with football awards. Why do they tell everyone who's won before they've even gone? But regardless, it would have made someone like Vinicius Jr. look so much more gracious. And, you know, if he won this year or if he won the year after, which he probably could, then it won't be a black mark against his resume. I'm going to finish on Italy because they have one of the best stories with Antonio Conte winning a league with Napoli. I mean, Napoli have won 2 in 3 years now, so they're making the 2020s somewhat of their decade. And I love that Conte, he takes players that have been pushed aside and he turns them into title winners. Look at Victor Moses for Chelsea, look at Ashley Young and Alexis Sanchez at Inter Milan. And now he's turned Scott McTominay into the Serie A MVP. Scott McTominay, a player who I think we all knew was getting played out of position at United as a defensive mid, but we never thought he was going to be as good as he is. And from what you see, he's an absolute legend in Naples now. Plus Bologna winning their first Coppa Italia since the 70s. I think the fact that they got Champions League football, they lost Thiago Motta, they lost Calafiori and they lost Xerxes and some more players, it just looked like it was going to be a Girona where they'd fall off a cliff. But to me, it proves this season football, it is healing. It is going in the right direction because there's more parity in football at the moment. It just proves super teams don't work with PSG. They brought in, the Neymars, the Messis, the Mbappes, the Sergio Ramoses, but having obviously still world-class players, but a very level team, it's worked wonders with PSG. And like I say, also teams like a Palace, like Newcastle, like a Bologna, like a Stuttgart who won their first DFB Pokal since the 90s. It just makes football more interesting. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of this season. If you can leave a comment, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. But thanks for watching.